with that and everybody coming in on Zoom, we will start the August 27th planning board meeting. Since we are all in person, we do not need a vote of any sort, so we will get started. First item on the agenda is the MBTA Community Zoning Draft Site Plan Rules and Regulations Purpose and Goals discussion.
Great. So included in the agenda memo were the draft goals. And as I said, this is a first draft pass just from staff and your consultant, and they go from A through J. And we just thought it would be good to have the board review them and edit. And
Do you have an extra copy then?
no, but I'd be happy to get you one. Let me just
I can
come
make a
to,
copy.
uh,
Well, we'll share, it's fine.
oh, it's right there.
No, it's okay.
And come to some consensus to start building off of. I don't know if you want to just individually go through, starting with A and.
Sure, I think that makes the most sense, especially if some of us are just catching up and making sure we're aware. So the first one, I can read it out, is to review as of right multifamily development in a process that is consistent with chapter 40A, section 3A of Massachusetts general laws. So as a reminder, what is 40A? So
40A is the State Zoning Act, which is the enabling legislation for all communities to adopt zoning. As everybody knows, section 3A is the new MBTA communities law that was enacted. We felt it was kind of important to put this established in the purpose. Ultimately, you know, while the rules and regs require the board to have a public hearing, it is not something that has to go to town meeting or something that has to go to the Attorney General. But we felt it was important to highlight the fact that site plan review is a review process. It is not a regulatory process like a special permit. It is not discretionary. There's, you know, items of discussion, but ultimately, you know, a by right use going through site plan review is a by right use going through site plan review. So we just felt it was important to, you know, state that in the purpose at the start.
great. Yeah, putting that up front is important. Does anyone else have any thoughts on leading off with that and then moving on to the next one?
No, I think that's a great lead off because essentially it says we, as a town, have a goal to comply with the law. And so I think that's really very good to have that up front.
All right, I'll move to B, which is to ensure the site is designed holistically with all other users, for all users and contributes to the neighborhood and the town. Andrew,
I think I just locked myself out of my office. Sorry, what? I think I just locked myself out of my office. Oh, God, no, that's okay.
as long as you don't need the charger.
Where's the battering ram starter?
We have a spare key up in the kitchen, but that's
Oh.
okay.
Um,
I was gonna tell Christine she doesn't have to sit there with her video. I don't have my phone, so go ahead, sorry.
So, I mean, designed holistically for all users and contributes to the neighborhood. I know that was a big concern related to a lot of multifamily development within town. Where people see it as changing the neighborhood they live in or the community. So if we're recognizing that a holistic approach is important, that at least shows we're thinking about it as a major component of review. So I thought that was good as well.
Looks like we're gonna have to
Mhm.
have things under that define sort of what we're talking about. I mean,
Well,
in terms of this,
So
it's
the.
too subjective otherwise, isn't it?
Right, so that's where I think you start, you have these goals. And then the rest of the site plan rules and regulations will set out the parameters
Okay.
to support these goals.
Okay.
Right, this is only 1.1 and there will be 1 point something else eventually,
Right.
right?
Yeah, one.
2, 7,
You have
1.355.
2 and 3 and 4,
Yeah,
So-
as Mark says, contributes to is very squishy, but because one person's contribution is another person's subtraction, but it's a very worthy goal, and I especially like the inclusion of the word holistically. And as Mark pointed out, more of it, there'll be more detail in sections to be written.
And
This is just the
I
first.
appreciated it was the neighborhood and the town. It's not just one or the other,
Mm,
that you're
right.
balancing the two, so.
That is nice.
Cool. The next is to ensure the site is, sorry, that's the same one, ensure the development is planned, designed, and constructed in a manner that integrates sustainable design practices into process from the very beginning, so that efforts to generate energy on site, promote energy efficiency, and eliminate harmful materials are considered along with functional design to deliver the best functional design while achieving high levels of health, energy, and resilience performance. So this is designing with solar in mind and on other types of minimizing fossil fuels without,
which you.
Yeah.
The demonstration. Fossil fuel free bylaw did pass and was accepted by the Attorney General as well, so. That's in place. I find this as a goal very cumbersome though, and I'm wondering if it can just kind of be.
It's way too wordy. I mean, you know,
So I-
what would,
Narrowed down and some of these elements put into the regulations as ways to meet. Ensure that new development is planned, designed and constructed in a manner that integrates sustainable design practices. To the maximum extent practical, or something like that, cause,
yeah, so I,
and take all of these other elements. And put them into the regulations as ways to. Ways to meet this goal is by doing these things. What I worry about is, let's take, Linda's house. Maybe one day Linda wants to turn it into a 3-family. She doesn't have to do anything around the outside. To change it up. There's the front door, there's a side door, maybe put in, another side door. But inside, given that it's, an older historic home. You're not gonna rip all the walls out on the inside to, change up all the insulation and pull down, materials inside for something that's, more sustainable material, so. That's where I, to extent practical or something, cause I worry
Yeah.
about that.
I liked what you said about to the maximum extent possible. I mean, it says, this finishes up right now with deliver the best functional design while achieving high levels of health, energy, and so which is it, the best for design or the high levels? It's, in addition to being too detailed, it's also unclear about what it means there. And I do recognize that we're now in the zero energy pilot, in the net zero pilot program, but not in the goals, but elsewhere. I like the idea about having language that makes it possible to go beyond that. There could be net positive developments to the maximum extent practical. Maybe practical is better than possible. And it also, the net zero goals, the pilot program does not cover low toxicity materials. So it's nice that this includes this as written in C, but I don't see that it belongs at this level of detail of the purpose and goals either.
and H also talks about materials as well, so I didn't know if it was better to drop it in favor of one or the other.
Well, but that's reclaimed and recycled.
Well,
not
in
low
addition to high quality.
toxicity,
Yeah,
But,
yeah, I
my-
wasn't sure. Yeah.
yeah,
My,
but one doesn't have to do too much in the purpose and goals. We could combine these here. and
That's
then-
just what I
yeah,
meant, like, it's
yeah.
just keep it simpler.
And keep the ideas elsewhere.
my other, thought as I'm saying is, so I can, move the rest of this into the regulations into, its own sustainability section. But, ensure that new multifamily construction is planned, designed. Because if it's just a conversion, that's not That's not new construction. That's not considered new construction,
Well, it should,
retrofitting.
we should cover that to some degree, because if they're tearing out the appliances and putting in new ones, we do care about them being low toxicity, reasonably sustainable, et cetera, ones. Or if they choose to tear out the walls to make changes, then we care about it. But if it's just repainting, we don't wanna make them tear out walls, like you said, just to re-insulate them on the insides. I think there's a balance there of, if you're going to be doing it anyway, you should be doing it according to these precepts. But if you don't need to do it on renovation, then you shouldn't have to.
I think there's a distinction between somebody who's renovating an existing house to turn it from, you know, a single family to a 3-family and brand new construction.
Well, don't you already have language to cover this in the sense of, if you're doing a small enough building project, a renovation project in your house, you don't have to pull a rolling permit, but if it's big enough,
No,
But
you
that,
do?
that threshold's not very high either.
Okay, no, I thought I heard something about that, but I don't remember the
So
details.
aren't we really just reinforcing the parameters we already have in place about sustainability,
Mhm.
you know, low carbon emissions?
Mhm.
At least that's what I take from that, okay?
What if we referred to the town's sustainability principles here, just as in A, we refer to 48, section 3A. We could also refer to our sustainability
See,
principles.
I
which
think that
covers
just
it
makes
as
it a
well.
lot cleaner, okay?
Yeah, and
Because that's
then,
really what
How
we're trying
about
to
if
do.
I work on C with the sustainability director and we come back with something?
what a nice
Yeah,
plan.
Okay.
By the way, I had in my scribbled notes that I was going to say something about lighting and dark skies and throwing light off site and all those other lovely things. Which also doesn't belong in the purpose and goals, as long as it gets captured somewhere.
Oh, there's gonna be a lighting section, trust me.
All right, cool.
D is ensure that the projects prioritize pedestrian, cyclist, and public transit before the automobile.
Like maybe the word access after transit, just encourage access, those 3 things.
Prioritize.
Well, no, because we
Pedestrians.
don't have access to pedestrians.
Well, well, at the end, ensure that project prioritize pedestrian, set of pedestrian, cyclist, and public transit access before automobile.
Okay. So after transit, put in access.
Yep, just a suggestion.
Hmm.
And why do you want to have before the automobile? Explain that.
Well, the way I read it was a lot of the regulations in town are basically like, you will do this and ensure there's so much parking. You will do this and ensure that the driveway is this wide, but it doesn't talk about, other than some sidewalk things, it doesn't really talk about like bike parking.
Okay.
Or, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
no,
That's the only reason I.
Certainly
I get into it.
bicycles and pedestrians, that's
Right.
critical to this
Right.
concept,
Or
okay?
maybe to Mark's point,
So
get
you-
rid of before the automobile.
Yeah,
just-
that was the only thing I thought was a
That's,
little clunky.
yeah, that's what,
but
yeah, that was my whole,
Yeah, I thought it was a little
Take
clunky,
out
but
Yeah.
before automobile.
yeah,
just because it's.
And leave it the way it
Yeah.
was.
Okay.
it sort of makes it think like
Yeah, I
sort of
read it.
revert to
Yeah.
the 40s or 20s.
Well, in the 20s, we had public I'm not getting into that now.
Establish best practices, this is E now, establish best practices through implementation of low impact development, LID, net zero techniques and other measures to create a site that contributes rather than degrades the functioning of surrounding natural systems in the environment.
So, net zero techniques or building techniques, which is different than LID.
Oh.
I think C, when I talked to Eric, will be the incorporation of those net zero sustainability building techniques. So I don't think net zero needs to be in E.
Right, it could just be LID
Yeah.
and other measures and strike net zero, because that is redundant.
And you'll run that past the sustainability people as well, I think, get the,
Yep.
okay, get their input on that. So,
It would also be possible to fold E into C, but that would depend on how much it goes on the sustainability principles versus, you'll figure that out with the sustainability director.
I'm happy to keep them separate.
Okay,
Um. So F is established concepts for projects to incorporate as minimum standards that will guide a project through the permitting process and while allowing for flexibility in design.
Does anyone understand?
No.
no, what is a concept? In
Yeah,
this-
I
in
think we
this-
should just scratch that. It just doesn't make any. I just don't understand.
Well, I think I
I
understand
think
what
it's-
it's trying to say. It's trying to say,
That's not-
write down some stuff.
That's not the purpose of site plan review.
I would say,
That-
wouldn't it be easier to just say establish minimum standards? For projects that will guide a project through the permitting process, but while allowing for flexibility in design.
I just-
That would be better.
Just trying to wordsmith it.
No, that's definitely better. I'm just trying to think.
So the
it
concepts
enough?
for design, I read that almost as design guidelines, like it'll do this, it'll do that, it'll do, you know, like. If you have a cornice or whatever, it has to look like this, you know, like some towns do that. In certain business districts to try to make it all uniform or cohesive, but that's obviously not what we're doing.
No, well, that could be true, but I
That's the
read
way
it-
I read it and
I-
and had questions.
yeah, I read it as, give some advice to applicants so that they can figure out, so that they have a nice
Can I-
little recipe to get through this process, but it doesn't tell them exactly how to design things.
So how about establish minimum standards for
Design,
projects that will guide a project through the permitting process while allowing
Sure.
That's what
flexibility,
Rob said, yeah.
Yeah.
allowing flexibility in the design.
Which is basically giving them a set of parameters before they go into a project, so that it goes easily through
Yes.
the permitting process.
Yes,
Yes,
Right, which is the goal.
Okay.
The whole thing, isn't it? G is minimize new impervious surface and encourage restoration of previous development to natural conditions in sensitive areas and direct new development towards disturbed land and brownfields.
Yeah.
I like
Seems
that.
only one brownfield in Concord.
Well, no, there's a couple
just
of,
wait, we might get more.
there's a couple sites that would qualify as disturbed, if not brownfield.
They're not,
I know they're not really.
2229 Main Street.
Is the only real brownfield.
Pretty much
Yes,
the only
I know.
real brownfield.
Yes, I know, but
You don't think MCI is gonna be a brownfield?
The wood part.
depends what they buried.
Might take it.
I'd be willing to bet.
I'd be
Okay.
willing to bet somewhere around those abandoned,
Yeah, well, cause that's what they did. They threw the stuff into a 55-gallon drum and threw it in the backyard. I mean, you know.
You should be glad they threw it in the 55 gallon drum first.
Mhm. Not just in the river. H is priority.
wait, before you go off, G, minimize new impervious surfaces and encourage restoration of previous development to natural conditions.
Previously developed sites.
Well, so this is again where somebody comes in and has, you know, a house and and they happen to be in the buffer of a wetland and want to just turn it into a 3-family. You know, somebody says, well, this previous development is in the buffer, they should return it to a natural condition and not turn it into a multifamily.
Well,
it says they encourage.
it doesn't,
Require,
yeah,
but do you think a future planning board would take that encourage to mean? I mean, it's site plan review and it's encouraging, it's not mandating,
plus,
it just says, ask the question, can you? Can
Do
you?
you-
Well,
improve the
I-
Does
buffer?
this need
I
2
would-
driveways? Could
Yeah.
you use 1 driveway instead of?
I
the
would be,
existing?
minimize new impervious surface and encourage restoration
To natural conditions.
of
Yeah, I would think. it's-
sensitive areas.
oh, that would be better,
Nat-
instead of previous
nat-
development.
Yeah,
No, restoration of, you know,
of sensitive areas to natural condition. Yeah, that's what you're doing. You're encouraging sensitive
Yeah.
areas to be restored.
What about striking the word new? Do we really need the word new? What about just minimize impervious surface?
I mean, development does imply new.
Well, but, in the case of redeveloping a site,
Yeah, I agree. I think we should strike new, because we're trying to reduce impervious surfaces. all places we
Everywhere.
can. Right,
and it's site plan review, it's not regulatory, allowing us to reject a plan, it's just,
yeah.
yeah.
I'd strike new.
Okay,
H is prioritize the use of reclaimed recycled materials in addition to high efficiency and high quality materials.
well, I don't think you need H.
If
I'm
you-
gonna work with Eric on C.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think there's too much wrong with that, yeah.
Development. That's my choice. We can't direct all development.
Should we
And then-
try to fold I into C as well?
Reduce heat island effect. Well, I is to reduce the heat island effect on site by incorporating canopy, shade trees and other sustainable methods. So that's also.
So I think I becomes one of the criteria. One of the measures in the regulations,
Okay,
Yeah, isn't that sort of part of E?
part of.
Like best practices for site and reducing impact
Yep.
and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
both
It's
C
just kind of,
and E.
yeah, just kind of gets folded in there.
sure.
And then J is to ensure the site design incorporates strategies to address the impact of our warming climate, including increasing average rainfall, extreme rainfall events, more frequent drought, and increasing average temperature and extreme heat events. So that's resiliency, isn't it?
It's sustainability and resiliency, which, again, I'll talk to Eric about, but, I find that to be, I find that to be a monumental task for most projects.
Because you,
That are
It's the
gonna
whole
be
issue
by
of-
right multifamily,
yeah,
um,
it's also the issue of. Do you develop to current standards or do you have to anticipate? What the environment is gonna be like 20 years down the road? I mean, that's one of the big
yeah, and
issues of how.
I don't think the board
I don't think we've.
has the ability or the jurisdiction to,
Yeah.
I think
to, by right,
there's laws in place already now about the expansion of the wetlands, and all of that, okay? I mean, I think if we were a coastal town, I think that'd be more important, okay?
Well, oh, no, it's plenty important for us too, but it seems like it's covered by the town's sustainability principles and whatever C will come out to
And-
say.
all right, I'll talk to Eric about that. But
C or E.
I see that as,
A bridge too far.
well, I see that as Sue said, the, town's overarching sustainability goals. To take that goal and funnel it down into, site plan rules and regulations for multifamily dwellings, that's a hard task.
I think the one thing that's interesting about this is that it's very similar to Lexington's site plan review. And they did get their MBTA stuff approved, knowing that that was their site plan review comments. So I think this is a kind of also sort of a safe place to start looking from. So.
Okay.
Because EOHLC has said that they, are considering what you have for site plan review, and this I don't think should be shocking, since I think it's already
Yeah,
been
yeah.
done before.
All right, I'll talk to Eric about it, cause again, this is just, the purpose, and then the rest of the regulations are gonna have. Like, okay, your lighting, it's, but to Sue's previous comment, there isn't anything specific in the purpose regarding lighting, and I think there should be. I think there should be something. So the next round,
Oh, like when you're talking to Eric, fold it into whatever.
Well, you know, lighting is a little bit different. It's, you know, the whole, you know, dark sky compliant and, you know, contextual sensitivity to a site and how it relates to lighting. And my staff is tired of hearing me talk about my
And-
neighbors, but
And do we want to stipulate dark sky compliant? I'm not so
Yeah.
sure we do.
Oh, sure. I guess it could
And-
better
and-
belong under E because it has to do with contributes to rather than degrades the functioning of surrounding natural systems in the environment. To not have light spilling the heck all over the place, ruining things for wildlife and tame human life.
okay, all right, so I'll work on that one. And how to incorporate that.
And then the last item, which wasn't a numbered one, was whether the board would to discuss the appropriateness of a major and minor application, the idea being that minor would be for 4 units or 3 units or less, I guess.
No, 3 units.
What?
There's no less. You-
3
you have
units,
to
I
be
guess, I
three
guess
to
it does
be
have to be, yes,
multifamily.
true. True, I'm,
Whether, you know, or 3 or 4.
I'd go
Yeah.
for 4, given that there is no less than 3, and covering exactly 3 seems kind of
feel silly.
Well, you can do like 2 duplexes.
Right.
So that would also be like if you had a house and you built a similar
I mean,
duplex or
what,
something on the
the
lot.
normal classification 1 to 4 is not a multifamily, isn't that how it works?
Nothing.
That's
is
at least
normal.
No, just nothing normal, that's true.
So, correct me if I'm remembering wrong, but I think the compliance guidelines talk about it's a 1 building with 3 or more units, or a site that has a single family, 1 unit in 1 building and 2 units in another building
at least, yeah.
at a minimum.
Which 2 duplexes contiguous wouldn't fit that bill. They'd be,
You know what? I'm not sure.
because that would be 4 units.
So now I'm gonna have to reread the definition of,
Yeah.
I think it would.
Because I could see somebody putting up 2 duplexes, you know,
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
and make them contiguous, okay?
Mhm.
okay, all right, I will follow up, on the multifamily definition but at least, start establishing the rules and regs with, you know, how a minor application and a major application are different.
That makes sense.
I feel comfortable doing that, I'm more comfortable, and I think we indicated through the process of MBTA communities that, you know, a lot of this could be focused on taking a McMansion, you know,
Mhm.
or the option of having a, do you want a McMansion or do you want 3 units?
Right.
So it seems to me that to make things easier to have the 3 units versus McMansion is a whole lot different than, you know, 40 units going into.
Right.
And-
Plus, we would
4
like to
acres.
encourage conversions of existing oversized houses that the person who, I mean, oversized for the person who's, or people who are currently in it. And it would allow them to stay or just make a
Mhm.
smidgen more housing and also discourage tearing the whole thing down and starting over.
It encourages infill. right?
Yeah.
Which is what one of the town's goals.
But if they have to go through the whole
They won't, yeah.
process when they just want to break it up with minor changes,
Right.
yeah. I would hate that.
Okay,
Awesome.
we'll get to work.
Oh, that's great, to move this along.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Elizabeth.
So what's the timeline on this, Elizabeth?
I'm gonna get right to it.
No, I mean, it's a big, you know, what do you envision as the timeline?
So working with Emily, you know, over September, hopefully have a draft to the board in October, ish, and have a, you know, a public hearing to adopt them, sometime in November and early December.
Okay, really quickly.
Before the end of the year,
Okay.
you know, my,
I wasn't sure how long the.
my
process
goal
would be.
is, you know, my goal is to have these completed and the board adopt them before the December 31st deadline to submit for our district compliance application to the state, so that they can go in. Well, so they can see, you know, what we have done.
Great. So we have a set thing at 7:40, so we'll move on to other administrative business in the meantime for a few minutes in advance. I guess the first item is public comment. So public comment is limited to 15 minutes with no more than 3 minutes allocated to any one speaker, and public comment is limited to items which are not on the agenda. So this does not include public comment on the proposed subdivision and any decisions related to that, because we haven't discussed that yet. As well as any other items. So I will open it up to the room or online if anyone has any public comments. And if not, doesn't look like it, so we will move on to the next administrative item, which is the MBTA Community Zoning Compliance Update.
So I had a good meeting with Chris Clutchman. Don't know exactly her title. She's the director of the community.
EOHLC.
Oh, yeah, is she? Okay, there you go. I had a really good meeting with the director of EOHLC. We briefly went through, you know, all of 8 comments, and her 3A staff wasn't on the call, it was just her. I just gave her an update that, you know, there's basically 3 categories. I think I sent the board the short presentation that went to the select board. Working with town staff on the GIS compliance model. We are going to meet with the 3A staff, a couple of questions about some of their compliance model, GIS model questions, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. We'll also talk to them about the zoning bylaw comments they had. One, you know, as far as the earth removal, that's a construction standard. It's not, has nothing to do with by right uses. I did politely tell Chris that her staff got it wrong about the minimum lot requirements. As their dimensional requirements for creation of new lots. Has again, nothing to do with by right multifamily. She laughed and she said, you know, towns know their zoning far better than they do, so. And then we talked about the third comment dealing with the single contiguous district comment that they made. And I let her know that the planning board was going to work with our GIS team to see, what potential solutions, could be to, address that. And but ultimately, if there is a good working solution, that would be a warrant article for 2025 annual town meeting. I let her know Concord, rarely does special fall town meetings. I went back through and I think since the zoning bylaw was adopted in 1929, I think there's only been maybe like 20 something special town meetings. So she said that was fine. So submit for submit our district compliance application by the end of the year. Include if the board does move forward with a warrant article for the map, that can be included. It is likely what would happen, and this is what they have been doing with all of the rapid transit communities. The application gets submitted and it gets put into an in review status. Currently, for the rapid transit communities that applied by the end of last year, there are 50 communities that are still in review status. What she said is, and there's going to be quite a few more for those communities that are gonna have fall town meetings and this year and applying to fix things that from, last year. So she said it is likely we would submit by the end of the year, knowing that, the town may be, correcting the overlay district boundaries itself, that they probably would not even begin to review it till after June.
That's good
So-
news, because a special town meeting is.
Yeah, special town meeting, and we estimate is like $25,000 to hand for one night. So, she said that process is consistent with what EOHLC has been doing, and she felt, very good about that.
Did you
So-
get a sense that they were gonna, excuse me, budge on the maps and stuff?
I did not get a sense that, but there's a lot going on as it relates to 3A.
Right.
And, there's current litigation.
Yep.
And, I think Linda also brought up a good question about this single contiguous district requirement. And, whether EOHLC has, thought about that as it relates to a community like Concord that has 2 commuter rail stations. And so we will be meeting with her staff to go over all of those. And I'm gonna, just ask that question directly, because,
Okay.
we have one district that's over 5 acres and it's adjacent to, it's within the transit area for Concord Center. And then we have another district that's within the transit station for West Concord, that's 31 acres. So those 2 combined, that may be sufficient, and whether they thought about that, because we have 2 stations, so,
Yeah,
that's a good question.
fingers crossed.
She did say that because her staff is getting ready for these communities that have fall town meeting, this year, that, to nudge them for a meeting. If I don't hear back in 30 days, I'll be nudging in, next week. But. So I did not get any panic or sense of urgency from this conversation. So, and I did follow that conversation up with town council, and he was also very supportive of that approach.
And is the fact that the AG approved the application carry any weight with this?
No.
No,
That's just our standard annual getting our zoning bylaw changes approved, right?
Well, regardless of MBTA
Or
communities,
rejected.
compliance guidelines. A zoning bylaw is still a zoning bylaw. State law, 30, chapter 40A still says the attorney general has to approve that, but I would just like to commend the board and, once again, Linda, to have the AG put in, a positive comment to the town for getting it done is something we usually don't see, so that's pretty cool.
yeoman's work.
But someone could now move forward and, under the, or, new zoning
Mhm.
and develop multifamily housing.
I mean, without the rules and regs, we would send them through site plan, and it would be it would be a collaborative effort. If somebody were to apply. But, yeah, it's zoning, it is in place.
Great.
That was it.
So with that, we will move to the 7:40 scheduled item, the preliminary subdivision public hearing. So in accordance with the provisions of MGL chapter 41, section 81T and Town of Concord subdivision rules and regulations to review the preliminary subdivision plan application of Stampsy and McNary, Inc. for the improvement of a new roadway and for the creation of 2 new building lots at 61 Walden Street, parcel number 0274-2.
So in the board's packet was a draft decision for the preliminary plan. With the waivers that the board discussed at the last meeting, it incorporates conditions that any definitive plan submission address all of the comments that were received by engineering, fire department, board of health, and Concord Public Works, water and sewer. It also incorporates the specific condition regarding the plan for extent of grading and tree removal for the subdivision and the stormwater drainage. Separate from the grading and development for the house lots. This is something that the planning board, I'm not even sure any of you were even here for signs, 1440, 1450. Main Street, I think Linda was the only one. But they did a similar plan where, because tree removal for the subdivision roadway and drainage is exempt from the tree preservation bylaw. Tree removal for the development of the individual house lots is not. But it's very challenging to separate the two, so having that upfront as part of the definitive subdivision plan makes it much clearer as the project moves forward. And then any other information that the board feels is pertinent for the applicant to submit for the definitive subdivision outside of what's already required in your rules and regs.
Wait, was that a question or a statement?
If there's any other conditions the board members feel need to be added.
I'm still interested in the applicant attempting to pursue a joint driveway, but I don't think that should be a condition particularly. Because how can we place a condition requiring them to investigate it? We can't, yeah.
Yeah, the board doesn't have the jurisdiction to condition the applicant to do anything.
And
With
conditioning
the
them to
abutters?
try to do something doesn't seem useful, so
No,
I'm putting it out there that I hope so, but I don't, I
Board
wouldn't
can make
say
a
so.
strong suggestion during the meeting that the applicant, approach the adjacent property owner about.
And that's as far as I would go.
I have a word problem that I don't like.
Okay,
Says in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the subdivision control. Isn't that a double negative, not inconsistent? Shouldn't it just read consistent?
we're,
It's on page 2.
Page
The first
two.
paragraph.
It's not a double negative.
No,
but-
because there are 2 negatives to it, I know, but, and it's,
But I think that's required by isn't that required by the zoning
it just,
bylaw?
it seemed awkward.
To
all.
find that is true,
Not inconsistent
But
as
it's not
opposed to finding that it is consistent.
right,
Oh, okay, that's fine, I just,
Okay.
the phrasing seemed awkward to me.
it is a little, but I think that language.
It's not a big deal, it was just, I really would have thought our wordsmith would have picked up. the-
Well, have you
Well,
read,
Have
you read the state zoning act?
well, the subdivision.
Oh,
control
my subdivision control,
God,
so
Which is
it's-
worse.
I think it does say not inconsistent, that we have to find that that's true.
Right,
I
Oh, and it's fine, I
agree.
didn't-
I believe
it's okay.
I think that's.
Yeah.
The case, because being not inconsistent,
Is different
Like
than being
the same
consistent,
as
which
being-
sounds
yeah.
semantic, but It is,
It's subtle, but it is different, yeah.
makes my head hurt.
It's okay, Elizabeth, don't, it's no big deal.
No, that's fine. I'm gonna make a little box, which is, those are all the things I have to do after the meeting. I will check, but because it is in quotes, I think that is language straight out of the subdivision control law. Um, And, um. So I do know that, the applicants here, I don't know if you wanna, he has any comments on the draft decision or not.
I do not know. We reviewed the draft decision with the applicant and we didn't really have any issues with it, so.
Thank you. I also just wanted to note, all of the letters which were received, or emails or in whatever form were circulated to the board, including ones up to, a few days ago, so.
And I wanted to say, I noticed and found interesting the comment in one letter that if we urging that we not grant these waivers on grounds that if the applicant were forced to pursue the fully compliant subdivision plan, it would be so expensive that they would simply not move forward. It's an interesting thought. I personally, on behalf of the town, am not willing to take that risk, but I wanted to acknowledge that I did think about the public comment we received.
So
I mean, I think about all public comments, but that was a new idea that had not been previously expressed.
So since this is, it's a preliminary plan and has no standing. And the engineering division didn't raise any, huge flags on, the constructability of the compliant subdivision. I can only provide, my experience dealing with 1450 Main Street, which was approximately, I think, 24 homes. And the removal of 66,000 cubic yards of fill. If it was financially feasible for something of that magnitude, grading for 2 house lots is, with a couple of retaining walls of, 4 feet is a much,
Lighter
Light.
lift,
yeah, it's,
literally lift of dirt.
it's a double-edged sword in the community, as people buy homes and then sell homes and are able to, have equity in it. It's the same thing. It's a double-edged sword with vacant lots as well. But since this is only a preliminary plan, it has no standing. It it has, doesn't provide the applicant any right to build. And the definitive plans as they, come through. There'll be far more information as far as the grading.
And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing to note is if this was not granted and they just went ahead with the proposal to simply fill in the lot, the planning board would have no more role in the project and would have no more oversight. Is that correct?
So the planning board would review a definitive plan for consistency with the rules and regs. And if the project is fully compliant with the rules and regs, the planning board has very, little ability to, deny a project. depending on the amount of grading that is needed, and the grading of the site, whether fill needs to be brought in or removed. It may trigger a special permit through the Board of Appeals for earth removal. But as we know with 1450 Main Street, the planning board granted that subdivision. The Board of Appeals, denied the special permit. They're two separate jurisdictions, they're two separate processes. They're two separate sections of the law. One is 40A, the zoning act and for the Board of Appeals, and it's subdivision control law for the planning board. And, they don't mix, and that one's been in, litigation for the last 3-4 years.
So I don't know if anyone else has any other comments to make, and then I assume we need a vote on. Oh, I guess we should open up the public comment. That's correct.
Sorry,
No, thank you.
suspect they're here.
Is there anyone online, Heather? No, I don't think so. Okay. So with that, what vote do we need, or is it just we authorize you to sign, but what?
Well, we need a motion, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To approve the decision
Yeah.
on the preliminary subdivision plan and certificate of approval of 61B Walton Street. A parcel 0274-2.
Second.
Right.
Oh, I see. The application from Stamsky and McNary for improvement of a new roadway and for the creation of 2 building lots. There.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that's unanimous. So,
To your comment about signatory, in June, the board makes that motion, signs those signatory pages, and those
okay,
get sent to the land court and the registry of deeds, so you don't have to make that vote
Okay.
at every meeting.
perfect. Okay. And so that is done. So with that, we'll move on to the ZBL section 4.2.2.2. Additional dwelling unit bylaw amendment and the Affordable Home Act ADU requirements.
So in the board's packet was a, comment letter from town council about the Affordable Homes Act, along with a, first draft of a potential bylaw amendment to the additional dwelling unit section that incorporates previous comments and discussions that the board had about certain amendments that the building commissioner had highlighted, that the Board of Appeals had highlighted, and then now with the Affordable Homes Act, additional amendments. So just starting with under 4222, the building commissioner highlighted, just clarifying that an additional dwelling unit can be in an existing or proposed single-family dwelling. Just to make that clear, if it doesn't have to be previously, the zoning bylaw was you could have an ADU only in a single-family dwelling and only after the dwelling had existed for 2 years. But with the new amendment, it was the intent that it was in a single family dwelling or in a detached structure, whether it was existing or proposed. So this just clarifies that. Town council noted that this is also consistent with the new Affordable Homes Act. Oh, thank you. Not even paying attention. Um,
turn the opposite
Exactly.
direction.
I thought the mouse would do
so item B, changes 750 square feet to 900 square feet, which is consistent with the act. And then adding, as defined under section 1.3.12. This is where, there have been conversations, with the building commissioner, Board of Appeals on, gross floor area. There was some confusion between the gross floor area, which is defined under that section. And then you have the maximum floor area ratio, which, so this just clarifies that gross floor area is gross floor area. It's exterior wall to exterior wall for any space over a ceiling height of 6'8". Under the maximum floor area ratio, which was adopted, put forth by the board and adopted by town meeting to deal with mansionization and size, bulk, and scale. So that is why under the maximum floor area ratio, basements, opened and screened porches are exempt from the maximum floor area ratio because they don't add to that size, bulk, and scale above ground. So this just clarifies that when the board in 2020 went forth and amended the ADU bylaw and had by right, it was 750 square feet. That was it. It wasn't a 5,000 square foot basement and a little 750 square foot, above ground ADU. It was, no, these are supposed to be smaller units. If somebody rents them, likely a 750 square foot unit is gonna be significantly cheaper to rent than, a 4,000 square foot ADU. So, that amendment just clarifies that. The one item of discussion is how garages factor into an ADU and the square footage, whether a garage should be exempt. One garage, it's just, it was one of those things that just wasn't thought of when the bylaw went through. So only one parking space is required for an ADU. So maybe the board wants to 750 square feet,
Well, 900.
900 square feet, which excludes, one car garage.
Well, it's actually,
The problem we've seen is, there's been some ADUs where, it's a let's say a 3-car garage and an ADU above. And, the ADU is 1,000 feet from the house. So, that 3-car garage that's not for the benefit of the single family dwelling. There's been other ADUs where, it's the house, a garage, and an ADU's been, on the opposite side, and, they share the garage, they each have access into the garage. So it was just something that the building commissioner had pointed out.
Well, is there a definition of a 1-car garage? If we exempted garages entirely, it would be as with the 5,000 square foot basement, a way to have gobs of storage space or otherwise increase the size. But as long as there is some reasonable definition so that the garage isn't a loophole, then it seems sensible to exclude it.
Does the garage, if you build a large garage, hit the far or the maximum floor area?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
so.
would.
So you couldn't put an oversized garage on a small lot to get around anything.
No,
And
No,
if you
but
put a unit on top of a garage, then it has setback rules that are different than just a garage, right?
Unless
garage
it's a
can be-
pre-existing garage.
I'm more concerned. with new things.
no, you could have an existing garage that's behind the house that's only 5 feet from the property line. If somebody wants to put an ADU on, above that, then they need a special permit from the Board of Appeals.
Ah, okay.
So it wouldn't be an as right ADU.
But in residence B, which now allows no, that was duplexes, never mind, I'm getting mixed up.
I should do it all
It's-
the time, so.
Why would we want to allow garages? The whole intent here is to have a small unit. Where either they're gonna rent it or the mother-in-law is gonna live or something like that. And by adding garages, we're adding more building to that lot, okay?
But I mean, there's quite a few, single family dwellings that have, 10 feet from the house is an existing detached garage.
Right.
Let's say it's a,
Right.
a 3-car garage and they want to put an ADU above it. And, the homeowner in the single family dwelling fully intends to continue to use that garage for the dwelling.
Right,
So, the building commissioner, if that ADU has access, into the garage, direct access into the garage, is that garage space part of the ADU and part of the 900 square feet, or, because it's a garage, it's not.
Well, if it's a pre-existing garage, then we could write the language such that the garage is grouped with the original house, not the ADU, and if the people on the property choose to allow the resident of the ADU to garage a car in that garage, that's their business, but.
So I'm gonna
Oh,
have a
would that
further
be-
conversation with the building commissioner on
Cause
this.
adding a new garage seems more relevant to Mark's
But-
concern.
But I guess my question is, do we care? If somebody's like, hey, I wanna put an ADU in, isn't that the goal?
Well, it is the goal, but if the idea
But if
is
you're
to
also
have
gonna-
infill development without, overly burdening the built environment with whole new garages.
Well, in
Um,
residence C and in a lot of the residence B lots, that's not an issue because
It's
the
residence A.
floor area ratio actually does work.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you're talking about residence A, or really, where all of a sudden you have the space, it's just, there's no mechanism to do
So
it.
I will have another conversation with the building commissioner to see, whether this actually,
is relevant.
rises to the level of actually needing to be addressed.
Right.
Okay.
So the as of right ADUs now are allowed to be the smaller of 900 feet or less than 1/2 the gross floor area of the principal dwelling. So here you're just putting in 900 square feet, but if you had so I guess I'm just saying we could be a little more restrictive if we wanted to.
Does it matter which is the principal residence and which is the ADU? If
Not
we
anymore.
have a residence,
Not
an
anymore.
existing one that's so small that the ADU would be less than half the gross floor area of, more than half the gross floor area, they would just say, well, the existing one is the ADU and the new one is the main dwelling.
No,
And
they
So,
can't.
so,
can't say that.
I can't say that?
yeah.
no.
No, okay.
I think if the half the square footage of the single family dwelling comes down to almost splitting hairs by a couple hundred square feet one way or the other, and it's not worth it.
Okay,
What the building inspection division would have to go through they would basically then have to go and have somebody get dimensioned floor plans for every single family dwelling if they did not exist.
that doesn't, the tax department, I mean, they have,
No, so
square
they
footage count.
calculate things far different than under zoning.
Okay,
They,
so it's not like they can just look
No.
at the record,
nope,
okay.
no,
Even on the property records?
nope.
When
The
I look
assessor-
these things
The
up,
assessor does,
The
The
assessor
field
does.
card's totally.
the
Yeah.
field card's totally different than, a dimensioned floor plan, and you have to also understand that, they may not be allowed, they're,
Sure.
they're not, you don't have to let them in. So, a dimension floor plan, so and its gross floor area, which is anything with a ceiling height over 6'8". So whether that's, an attic space, and this is how complicated it gets when you talk
Right.
about maximum floor area ratio. You think of somebody with an attic and dormers. The space down the middles has to be calculated. They have to get an architect because then each dormer space that's above 6'8" has to be calculated. It's actually, a significant amount of work.
Okay.
So,
So
And I
let's
can
just
tell you,
leave
the
it at
assessor's
9.
office doesn't do that. They just take the area and half it, is what they do.
Mhm.
In my house, we have a 3rd floor with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, okay, it's the same size as the 2nd floor, okay? But if you look at the assessor's card, it's the half the area.
Oh,
Okay, and
because
yes,
the roof sloped or
you
something
don't
like that?
lose.
Yeah.
It's more
That
than
would
6 feet.
explain a lot, because I see some really odd numbers on Concord jets, and now I understand why.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers aren't necessarily what they are.
so that would be my reason why.
Okay.
C doesn't change. E gets completely deleted. I mean, not E, D. D
Right.
gets deleted. E and F, do not change. G, the inclusion, including 6.2.4, that section is, reduced frontage lot.
Mm.
And, so you can create a new lot that has a reduced frontage, and in that, requirement, the dwelling has to be located, behind the line where the lot expands out to meet the required setback. I'm still having conversations with the building commissioner about this, because he has raised, valid questions. So if somebody has a reduced frontage lot under 624, they can't have an ADU located in that front portion of the lot. But if somebody has a legal non-conforming lot that doesn't have the required frontage, they can go to the Board of Appeals to get a special permit to have an ADU. So, I'm going to look back through our, town meeting records and, see when that reduced frontage lot section got added, and specifically what was the conversation around requiring the dwelling to be located back behind the line. So more to come on that one. But currently, this is just to clarify that, that section of the bylaw is dealing with the creation of a lot, a dimensional creation of a lot, and not a standard setback. H is Affordable Homes Act. The board already had one parking space for the additional dwelling unit, adding that except within a half-mile radius of a public, the access public transportation, right? That no parking spaces shall be required. So we put in Concord Center or West Concord Commuter Rail Station. Sue had brought up a couple of thoughts. I'm fairly certain public transit does not include anywhere the commuter rail tracks go.
I want
But-
to, what, someday we're gonna have a bus. I just want us to reference
Right.
whatever
Town
applicable
bus, whatever
definition.
they're trying to put together,
There's a
the.
lot of controversy about buses.
Oh, I'm
right now.
sure, but someday, in 50 years, when people are willing to have buses. And, as long as, we should just cross-reference some state guideline defining what they
Yeah.
mean by public transportation.
So I will probably have to get clarification, because I did take the opportunity when I was on the phone with Chris Kletchman. To say, so is EOHLC gonna promulgate guidelines for the, ADU Affordable Homes Act? And her comment was, well, unlike MBTA communities, the law is pretty clear. She says, e- she does see having to promulgate some type of guidelines. One example she gave is that the new law requires, towns to submit yearly how many ADUs are being developed. And so she said it is more than likely that they will promulgate guidelines, setting out how building commissioners will have to do that. I will put forth this question to her about public, is public transit
How do they
defined?
define it? Yeah.
Cause
Did-
it's
there
gonna
was
be
a-
it's gonna be, I think my thought is that it's gonna be, as I, talk with Sue. You talk about, a state public transit agency or a regional transportation authority. And I think we may see EOHLC defining that better in some type of guidelines.
That would be.
There was an APA conference call this afternoon. I don't know. And they'll have it online in the next couple of days. And one of the big questions was about what constitutes public transportation. Yeah,
I think this one is the one that has more than one session.
yes.
Yeah, so I think I'm on the next session.
Yeah.
I also wonder if there's a good definition of what within a half mile means. Any portion of the lot is within a half mile, or the majority of the lot is within a half mile. Again, I hope that they will explain what their definition is so that we can just write that into our bylaw, that whatever they says it is what
So-
we mean.
So similar to MBTA communities, and similar to almost, most of the zoning bylaws that, go into effect.
Mm.
Usually you're not one and done. So they come back. I think if by February, 2nd, the board has moved forward and has something on town meeting that meets the requirements of the Affordable Homes Act. And, again, it goes to the Attorney General. The Attorney General is going to have to, approve this under that new act. But it may be the comment comes back that, this is the only public transit we currently have, so we're in compliance. If something else, if the town starts, a shuttle and the state guidelines come back and says, any transit that's, operated by a public entity is considered public transit, then the board would have to amend the bylaw and,
Yeah, I'm just more concerned about the case where either an applicant says, I don't have to provide parking because this is close enough on grounds of this thing that we don't believe is transit, or neighbors say it should have to require parking because it is further away. And then we get into some giant argument about what is public transportation. I would just like it to
Well-
be pinned down.
a half-mile radius from the commuter rail station,
Oh, if we say the commuter rail station.
that's what it says.
Okay,
So I'm not worried about us implementing a half-mile radius from the commuter rail station. The commuter rail station is a
Is-
defined spot, where the train stops and the platform
Yeah.
is. So I'm not worried about implementing what we have.
okay.
One thing I heard on the call was that, they recommended that you include a definition of accessory dwelling unit. So I think, so I'm trying to,
Don't we have one much earlier in the definition section or something?
It
Oh,
is a,
no?
self-contained housing unit inclusive of sleeping, cooking, sanitary facilities on the same lot as a principal dwelling. I think they indicated that, and people are asking, well, what about a mobile home, or what about,
Well, so that's where you get
Caravan
into,
or-
you know, individual towns and their zoning bylaws.
Right.
So we have the definition of dwelling, and we have a definition of dwelling unit.
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter whether it's a single family or an ADU.
okay,
It's a dwelling unit, a structure or portion thereof providing complete, independent and private living facilities for one or more persons, including permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. So we already
So
have a
already have-
definition of
already have-
dwelling
yeah.
unit.
Okay.
So I think that's
Okay.
already defined.
Mhm.
And to your second part was. Ready for what? What was the second part?
RVs or mobile,
Oh.
the town doesn't allow.
The town doesn't.
non-permanent.
Right,
The town
And
does not
also,
allow-
it's not permanent
mobile
for
homes.
all of those things that Elizabeth just read off,
Right.
so it does not count as a dwelling in Concord. Even if we allowed it.
You can't legally occupy it, non-permanent, right? Isn't that something?
Would have to have a permanent foundation.
Right.
Okay.
This came up, I remember, in discussions
That's
of
why
what
you
about
can't
tiny
have
houses.
tiny
Right.
houses on
Yeah.
wheels, yeah.
If they have a permanent foundation, sure.
Sort of.
so I
Well,
noticed you added
Right there.
tourist home, but would you think of putting it in short-term rental?
No, because that's not defined. And to the building commissioner, that's, the definition of tourist home is a short-term rental.
It's more that, I think if we're gonna get objections to this from any people in the community, they're going to have as a concern that all of these ADUs are gonna be turned into short-term rentals. So I just was thinking if we said, no, it cannot be a short-term rental and define that, as opposed to try and convince people that a tourist home really is the way Concordians refer to it, short-term rental.
That's what M is, isn't it?
That is how the building commissioner has interpreted that for the last 20 years.
And there are multiple places in the zoning bylaw that reference. bed
And
breakfast or
that's
tourist
why
home.
people who want to do like an Airbnb, they go through the Board of Appeals and get a special permit. And that is why the ones that don't get a special permit, there are people that send in a complaint to the building commissioner saying, this is my neighbor's house on Airbnb, they don't have a special permit, and the building commissioner, politely sends them a notice. So, the whole conversation about a short-term rental bylaw is maybe something for next year.
Oh.
Touching that with a 10-foot pole.
But, so that is how the building commissioner. 1, 2, 3, 4, the last 4 building commissioners. A tourist home is, basically another term for short-term rental.
So we should address short-term rentals the year after the 250th, when everyone is going to want to do a short-term rental. But we can't do it. It's too late for that right now.
Anybody who wants to do a short-term rental.
Can
for
go
the
ask for a
250
special permit.
Can file for a special permit with the
Yep.
Board of Appeals.
Yep. For Board of Appeals.
So
And then,
do we have in here that we have site plan review?
not for ADUs,
But we can have site plan
you
review.
can.
Do we want to have site plan review if we're talking about how we want to change this? We can't do special permits anymore, but we could do site plan review, and do we want to? I'm just asking.
You haven't had site plan review.
Why for
For-
these and not
for
others?
the last 4 years for by right up to 750 square feet. Um. and I'm reluctant to,
Make more work. That wasn't what you were going to say.
I'm reluctant to add another layer of complexity. And time. And expense. To something that's supposed to be just as right and convenient for people to do. And. That's just my opinion.
But it gives us no control over the process. But you don't really care
We've
about
had
that.
no control,
You don't
and
need
we're happy
control.
with that.
And we have no control over people building a single family home or a duplex.
Well, a duplex is a special permit. still.
Well, okay, yeah. Sure.
I mean, the original purpose in 2020 for having the by right was to. Make this something that was attainable. That's just my comment. My opinion.
Well, why did the ADU they put up across the street from me have to go to the ZBO?
I believe, cause it needed a setback waiver,
Oh, okay.
so I don't think it was 1,000 square feet. Was it? I
can't
don't remember. It was either up to, it was over 750 square feet, or they may have needed a setback
Yeah, I
waiver.
think it was close to 1,000.
Yeah, and they need, that's was the other reason.
Okay.
Um. So M is the tourist home conversation, and then the last part again is just clarification. Cause we're talking about legal non-conforming lots. And then the building commissioner, you can get a special permit if you don't have the required minimum lot size. And then we forgot, there's a lot of lots out there that. The frontage requirement may be 125 feet, and they have 110. The lot size is 20,000 square feet, and they have 40,000 square feet. They're more than enough area, just not enough frontage, so, that was, something that the building commissioner. Talked about adding, there's no reason why somebody who has less than required frontage can't also apply for a special permit. And then lastly is whether to get rid of the special permit process for up to 1,000 square feet. If you're going to by right to 900. There's really no purpose to have a special permit process for another 100 square feet. And in my conversation with the town council, full agreement, and he's also questions, and it would be very difficult to say that there's some discretionary decision that has to be made over 100 square feet, and whether it's not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood.
So basically you wouldn't be able to deny a permit for 1,000 because you're 900 by right, is that what you're saying? There's very
and
little
what- yeah,
difference,
what-
so what's
Yeah,
the
what's
basis?
100 square foot, how could anybody say 100 square foot difference is gonna be substantially detrimental to the neighborhood? He said that would be such a subjective thing that even he felt goes beyond that discretionary power of a board of appeals.
How big have the ones been that have been going in? Have they been over 900? But then everybody always asks for as much space as they can get. And if the state thinks
There's-
900 is enough, then
There's been a few, there's been, a few that were, 750 square feet. They had to get a special permit because it may have been over an existing garage and, but, and then there's been a few up to 1,000, but, It's. I mean, and I'm waiting for the, building inspections division to send me a list. They maintain a list of new dwellings and ADUs. And, what some people gone forward and gotten the special permit, but they have 2 years in which to act on that permit. The construction is not, it's for this year. Up to now, maybe 6 or 7. It's not. It's not dozens and dozens of units being built.
I mean, the distinction between 750 and 1,000, you're adding an extra bedroom, that could make a difference. But like 100 square feet is not a bedroom, that's almost nothing.
Well, when you count the walls and all, I mean, that 100 square feet, that's 10 by
10 by 10,
10, that is,
it's this table. I mean,
that,
it sort of,
no, 10 by 10 is a bedroom, except that you also have to take away the wall area. Not the way people think nowadays, it's not a bedroom, but it could be.
it could be.
But then 900 square feet, you can get a couple bedrooms and everything else into
You can
that,
get 2
so,
bedrooms in that,
yeah,
but 700 feet would be hard.
yeah,
So like,
yeah,
so that to me makes sense, is if 750 by right is 1 bedroom,
yeah.
makes sense. You want 2 bedrooms, it's a special permit. Now, if you're saying you can get 2 bedrooms by right, it's just gotta be creative.
Why does it?
Why does it
need the
really,
extra
like, why do you
100
need the
square feet?
administrative pain associated with it
Yeah,
for
and it's
everybody
a lot
else?
of administrative pain,
Right, so.
Yeah.
Concur.
Okay, so I will follow up with the building commissioner on those couple of things and bring this back when, this will, after speaking with him, he'll have his staff look at it. And then probably we'll have the board look at it one more time. And then send it to town council. So that is, in the past 2 years, we've been sending bylaw amendments as soon as they get to, well drafted, sending them to town council, get vetted long before the warrant closes. 5 years ago, they went to town council after the warrant closed and, it just made town
Yeah.
meeting, the floor of town meeting much more complicated. So I'm very happy with this process now.
So planning board liaison updates.
I went to the West Concord Advisory Committee meeting. They unfortunately didn't have a quorum, but it was a good planning session for them. One of the things I did want to bring up to the board was target was to have 2 joint meetings a year, one in the spring, which we've had, and then one in the fall. I was gonna throw out the 2 October meetings or the November meeting as possibilities. I did share the schedule with Susan.
Yeah.
But I wanted to notify the board and see where, so.
But, and I think the chair of the West Concord Advisory Committee is pulling the rest of the board to find a date that works for one of those 3 meetings.
Assuming our schedule's not full, then it's.
So I have a question about the Economic Vitality Group.
Yes, they meet tomorrow, so,
They want to put forth something about allowing retail space in industrial zoning. So you want to comment on that
I
is my
had,
question premature?
well, no, it's not premature. Because we were sort of at this same place last year. And they, didn't move forward quickly enough to really get things underway. Now I think what they're finding is that some of the issues that they thought were related to zoning not being favorable, actually were more related to other issues of infrastructure and economics. So I'm not sure that they feel that zoning is the,
Oh, okay. I
you
guess
know,
I was
should
led
be-
to believe that they thought there was a warrant article that needed to be put forward in June of 2025
yes,
to allow, industrial areas to sell.
Accessory retail in
Right.
industrial
Right.
districts.
right.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
I think there's still an interest, but I think
Okay,
it's
I was just curious.
cooled a bit. I don't know if you heard more.
I have not heard more.
But
It took me by surprise. I didn't,
Yeah, I think they found that, there was interest in a brew pub. But it was a water issue more than it
Oh,
was
okay,
an issue of zoning. I mean, you'd have to get the zoning right, but even if you had the zoning right, they couldn't get the water right, so
viewpoint.
I
Yeah.
think that, and there was no other sort of pressing, oh, this is a large problem. No, it was a small problem that,
Okay.
people were concerned about, but it didn't turn out to be
Okay.
as much zoning as they thought, but if they revisit that,
Yeah, so I'm just
I'll
curious. Okay,
update,
thank you.
yeah.
Well, it's colder.
Yeah,
Welcome to our world.
And then the last item on the agenda is the meeting minutes from May 21st, 2024. Meeting, which was distributed earlier. Seen that, they had been edited by board members, but I didn't have any other comments, so I didn't know if anyone else had anything to bring up.
no,
If not, can I get a motion to vote on those, and then we can put that to bed.
I move to approve the minutes of May 21st, 2024 as submitted.
I'll second that. Okay, then all those in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, that's unanimous. And with that, that is our agenda for the evening.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because you had this dog for the hearing that you were doing. As it relates to the MBTA zoning and the contiguous zones, are you still sort of looking at how to make that work? And I guess is one of the considerations, I know that West Concord is sort of an obvious spot because it's large, but are we also looking at Concord center in that area? I mean, when you're looking at options, I'm like, are you just looking at all the options? Several options.
What for, if it has to be
If
50%
it has to be, yeah, 'cause
contiguous?
one zone has to be contiguous. I mean, the last meeting, they were sort of playing and it looked like, the West Concord area looked like the obvious place to do it, but, there was I think during the zoning meetings, there was a lot of feedback about why are we still building at West Concord and have you really looked at Concord? And so I'm just asking the question, we have to be prepared to deal with the folks who are concerned in West Concord and in Concord, will you be looking at sort of a Concord Depot kind of option? I don't even know if it's feasible because this.
So, so I can tell you, just my perspective, ultimately, it's gonna be, the
Yeah.
board and, conversation. From my perspective,
Yeah.
If the town is required to move forward and amend the district to meet this single contiguous comment, it's not a huge fix. It's a squishing game to make sure that you meet that requirement without, and still meeting the 50% within the transit area, but still meeting your capacity requirement of 1,094 units. And so, but it's not a huge change.
Well, it's
Um,
not a huge change if we
to-
squish it into West Concord, but it would be a huge change.
Correct, so it's not an area wise, it may not be a huge, a huge change. To look at Concord Center, to be able to make that happen in Concord Center.
Yeah.
Because the smallest districts, they're like 9 acres. To go from 9 acres to 41 acres. That's so beyond the scope of conversation that the community had.
Yeah.
You look at the Sudbury Thoreau district, to go beyond that. You are now going into the Thoreau Depot Business District, which there was, clear comments from the community. Did not want to jeopardize that commercial zone district with a by right multifamily. You go off the other direction, you're getting into, a pretty established neighborhood with, very small lots. And when you do the compliance model and you put in the setbacks and the lot requirements, it may mean nothing anyways. And for this area, you can't expand any further because everything around it is
Yeah,
town-owned land.
Yeah.
So that can't count anyways. So,
Yeah, no,
Again,
I was just curious because at the minute you start saying reducing some portion, if you start reducing some portion of Concord, someone will balk, right?
Well, it is
Because the land of
problematical,
Concord- Yeah, yeah, so,
but the state didn't think about that when they.
yeah,
wrote
no, and
the
I actually, I just really hope the fact that we have two,
Station.
really, it should, it's different, we're unique, and
Common
hopefully that we
sense.
can get rid of not having the
yeah,
50% contiguous.
that's so
buffer.
funny.
I know,
All right, well,
state,
just wanted to ask,
Yeah.
because someone asked me, so.
Yep. Yeah,
And I know, and you sort of worked it through and it's complicated, yeah, so.
no, but
Yeah.
what, this is, 24/7 and, at least in my brain and probably, Linda's for a
Yeah.
long time.
I know.
And it is complicated and it's still even complicated for me, somebody who's, constantly thinking about this and actually, has a pretty good understanding of zoning. And for, a lot of people, zoning's very challenging, so.
Well, you did a good job sort of playing scenarios the last time through, so I get it, it's
Yeah.
complicated, very complicated, so.
Awesome. So, I think with that, we're all done. So, have a good night, everybody, and adjourn. Thank you.
Happy Labor Day.